and more important. So today, I invite all Canadians to raise a glass to our dairy farmers and thank them for the important role they play in our communities and our economy. I am proud to be a Canadian dairy farmer, the son of a dairy farmer and the father of another.
The Honourable Member for Newmarket Aurora.
Canada has entered a recession, the only country in the G7 to do so. Our economy has shrunk 3 out of the past 4 quarters. But what does this mean? This means jobs are at risk, paychecks don't go as far, housing is out of reach, and 1 in 4 Canadians are now food insecure. We have neighbours who are saying that they're leaving our country in search of better opportunities elsewhere. Yet this Liberal Prime Minister says that affordability is the best it's been in a decade. Well, I hate to break it to him, but Canadians don't get to blow $200,000 worth of in-flight catering on the taxpayer credit card like he does. Canadians deserve fiscal responsibility today, where every tax dollar taken from them is respected. Mr. Speaker, Conservatives are committed to cutting taxes, removing red tape, and ending the wasteful spending to finally get Canada building, hiring, and growing. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Hull Aylmer.
Monsieur le Président, je me lève.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to pay tribute to a true Mayor of the Confederation, Mr. Jean Augustine.
Today to receive the Pearson Centre's Laureate Award, its highest honour, joining such past honorees whose leadership has helped make Canada a better country, including Jean Chrétien, Joe Clark, and Irwin Cotler. Hear, hear. Born in Grenada, she immigrated to Canada in 1960 under the West Indian Domestic Scheme, the same scheme that my mother came to Canada. She worked in education and later served on the founding committee to organize Carabana, now known as the Toronto Caribbean Festival. Jean Augustine was the first black woman elected to the House of Commons in 1993 and became the first black woman to serve in a federal cabinet. She introduced the motion to recognize February as Black History Month, and she also introduced a motion to have the famous 5 monument erected on Parliament Hill. Wow. On behalf of the entire House, I would like to salute Jean Augustine for her life of public service and thank her for making Canada the modern and inclusive country we enjoy today. I hope all members will join us this evening.
Oral questions, questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The G7 countries are all facing tariffs and global instability. But Japan is not in a recession. The United States aren't in a recession. The UK isn't in a recession. France, Italy, Germany, they're not in recession. Why is Canada, under this Liberal Prime Minister, the only G7 country in a recession? The Honourable Minister of Industry. Mr. Speaker, we are currently managing a tariff war with an economy that is much more integrated with the American economy, and the colleague across the way knows it very well. One thing is clear. In the meantime, we are creating jobs. We have been able to attract jobs in many different sectors in our economy. I'll give you a couple of examples. Whether it be 3,000 jobs with the agreement with Saab and Bombardier for building a new airplane, whether that be in Trois-Rivières, Kruger, 350 new jobs, or whether that be in Prince Edward Island, 250 new jobs.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Mexico shares a border with the United States in a tariff war, and Mexico is not in a recession either. It's just Canada in North America that's in recession. And beyond that, mortgage defaults have gone up by 1/3 year over year. We have the highest level in 17 years. Canadian households are the most indebted in the G7. Today, Food Banks Canada showed that Canada is failing once again in a new report. 1/4 of Canadians are facing food insecurity. Why is Canada the only G7 country in a recession? The Honourable Minister responsible for Canada-US trade. Mr. Speaker, as my colleague has said, we are facing unjustified tariffs in the context of our free trade agreement with the United States. This week, we will be discussing that agreement with American representatives, but at the same time, Mr. Speaker, we're not waiting. We're protecting Canadian workers. We're protecting Canadian industries. We're working with the provinces to make sure that we can help these industries in a positive way, and at the same time, Mr. Speaker, we're building Canada.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Group of 7 industrialized nations, they all face tariffs and global economic forces, but Japan is not in recession. The United States is not in recession. The United Kingdom is not in recession. France is not in recession. Germany is not in recession. Italy is not in recession. The only G7 country in recession is Canada. Why is it that Canada, under this Liberal Prime Minister, is the only G7 country in a recession today?
Honourable Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member should do his economic homework. He should understand that Canada is the most integrated country in the world with the United States. They have declared a trade war on us. This side of the House understands that. We will control what we can control. That's why we're building new mines at Red Chris. That's why we're building new pipelines on Sunrise. That's why we're building 4 new mines in Saskatchewan, a uranium mine, a potash mine, and a copper mine. They should start to understand economics and try to help build this country instead of tear it down.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mexico shares a border with the United States and is as integrated with the U.S. as we are. And Mexico is not in a recession. Only Canada, in all of North America, only Canada is in recession. Not only that, since this Liberal Prime Minister took office, he's lost 46,000 jobs, 112,000 in the last 3 months alone. We have the second highest unemployment in the G7, a third higher than the U.S. The economy has contracted 3 of the last 4 quarters. Over $20 billion of net investment has fled the country. 5 consecutive quarters of investment dropping, mortgage delinquencies up a third, a 17-year high. Why are we the only country in a recession?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition should take note of some of the facts. For example, 3,500 jobs annually being created with our Joint Support Ships contract, 2,300 jobs to produce our AOP ships, 1,800 jobs for our fixed-wing search and rescue, 700 jobs for our remotely piloted aircraft system, 5,300 direct jobs for our river-class destroyers, Mr. Speaker. The list is very long. The Leader of the Opposition should stop running down Canada and join us in our efforts.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It's the Liberal Prime Minister that's running down our economy and then running away from accountability for it. Where is he anyway? We've known now. It's been 4 days since Statistics Canada reported that Canada is the only G7 country in a recession, and the Prime Minister has not answered one question, not in this House, not from the media, not from anyone. The guy who said you hire him in a crisis, well, now he's made a crisis. He's created the only G7 economy that's in a recession. Instead of running away from accountability, why doesn't he run in here and do his job?
That I think broke a rule. I mean, we're implying that somebody is not in the House when they could be. I would warn members against doing that, because at some point I might have to dock questions. The Minister of Jobs and Families.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In fact, when the global winds of uncertainty were blowing, what did this government do? We took immediate action to put things into place to